So thanks, folks, for coming along and talking today about the proposed Gower Grown project. This is a project that has come from conversations with Ed from Castell Howell and conversations around the table at Bwyd Abertawe, which is the local food partnership for Swansea. And for the region is really keen to try and see what we can do collectively together to support more vegetable growing on Gower. And from conversations we've had with a number of local farmers or ex-farmers about really the dearth of veg growing on Gower these days, and how it's become increasingly difficult for anyone to make ends meet growing vegetables. But also we hear a lot about the demand for local veg, and certainly many of us across Swansea would like to have access to and be able to buy and eat more local veg. But there are clearly big challenges around making that economically viable. That being one of the challenges, there are challenges around skills, the availability of land for growing, and lots of other challenges. But we've been having these discussions with Ed from Castell Howell over a number of months, really, Ed, haven't we? Because Castell Howell are also committed to seeing what can be done to support local vegetable growing across Wales, and have been involved in a number of great initiatives already, not least the courgette project in South East Wales. And so Ed, like us, is really keen to see what we can make happen in South West Wales. So the initial proposal is that we identify a number of growers across the local area who would be willing to plant something. It's admittedly getting late in the year now, but plant something to grow locally over the coming season that could be harvested in the run up to Christmas and could find its way into Castell Howell's vegetable supply chain, and hopefully onto the tables of hospitality businesses across the local area and into a number of other food-related schemes, perhaps the Everyone Deserves a Christmas campaign, which Castell Howell supports in Swansea East. So that's kind of a little intro to where we've got to. It's not easy to connect with farmers and growers who want to be part of the project. I think there are probably lots of reasons for that, but we are in really good conversations with a number of local farmers who have expressed their interest. So we are still hopeful that we can make something happen. But can we start with a little round of introductions from everybody who's here? Ed, I'm going to come to you first, and you can introduce yourself and your thoughts about the potential for this project. And then I'll come to each of you in turn, introduce yourselves and just share any initial reflections, whether you think this could be something that you'd be keen to be involved in, and any thoughts and reflections from your own sort of professional fields. Ed, I'll come to you first.
Okay, well, Bwyd, thank you, Dawn and Zoe, for organising the call here. Thomas, I know everybody on this call, so I'll skip the introductions there. Yeah, I guess what we're looking for really is to develop some of our learnings on evolving what on the outset seems to be something really straightforward. It's growing things in Wales and delivering them to kitchens or commercial kitchens. But it's nothing is that straightforward, of course. And I think we had the project last year with Bishopston School in Swansea, just on Gower there, and that went extremely well, and there's a bit of a legacy from there. But I think in terms of our learnings in the past 12 months, I think we're coming to a stage where we've got a little bit of a template to follow, and I'll expand on that a little bit further in this conversation, if that's okay. Okay, diolch yn fawr, thank you.
Great, thank you, Ed. Yes, we'll get into some more of that detail. Lucy, can I come to you? Lucy from Secret Hospitality.
Hi, I'm Lucy from the Secret Hospitality Group. So we've got 4 venues across Swansea Bay, and we are committed to supporting local suppliers. So Castell Howell, obviously a major one for us, and we've got a really great relationship with them. We met in the year and actually expressed our concerns of using Gower growers, and maybe they can't keep up with the quantities that we need. So we unfortunately haven't been able to support them as much as we'd like. So this was really interesting for us to maybe be able to bridge that gap a little bit because we have big volumes. So yeah, exciting.
Thanks for being here, Lucy. Yeah, volumes are clearly one of the big challenges. Richard, can I come to you?
Morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Richard Bond. I work at the moment on the Food and Drink Wales project. So I work on a number of projects, work closely with Ed and hospitality businesses across Wales and the UK, looking at increasing the amount of Welsh food and drink that's sold, both on a national basis, but also locally. My background is hospitality, sort of 28 years in hospitality. And so, yeah, got a lot of view across all the sides of it.
Thanks for being here, Richard. Ian, can I come to you?
Morning, everyone. My name is Ian Chriswick. I'm one of my roles is lecturer of landscaping and horticulture at Gower College on the Hill House campus in Cocket. A year ago, we started a project called the GCS Green Hub, which, as well as providing qualifications in horticulture, is looking to involve food production as a means to deliver that qualification. And we're really at the start of the project, but what we would like to do is for that produce then to go to worthy causes in the local area. This year, the first crop has gone to support the Phoenix Centre in Town Hill for their free kitchen on a Wednesday, and also we've recently engaged with the Nelson Trust, which is supporting female ex-offenders to feed them and teach them cookery skills. So we're looking to expand that idea over the years.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, so we hear a lot about the shortage of skills, people with the knowledge and the skills in horticulture. So that is an important part of the jigsaw. Sarah.
Morning, everybody. I work for Lantra, and we run the horticulture side of Farming Connect. So work with commercial growers across Wales. So probably lots of the guys you're trying to get hold of, Zoe. I feel your pain. They're just busy, aren't they? I think timings is everything with this project, but yes, really glad to be a part of it, and happy to support in any way that we can. We've obviously got colleagues that work with the farmers themselves as well. It'd be good to get some livestock farmers involved who've perhaps grown in the past and are keen to look at growing again. Good to meet everybody.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Really great to have you on the call, and yeah, your insights will be important. Andrew, thanks for joining the call. We're doing a round of introductions, and yeah, we'd love to hear your perspective as a farmer, I think, and a local councillor.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry it took so long to get on. I had to download Zoom or something. So, yeah, I'm Andrew Stevens. I'm Swansea Council's Cabinet Member for Environment and Infrastructure. I'm also the council champion for the rural economy. Plus, I'm a livestock farmer that actually used to grow a lot of veg, as was just mentioned now. So, I'm a third-generation farmer. My family farm both in Gosainen and down in Gower as well, in Abertawe. Yeah, so I'm just interested to listen to what's going to be said and know about the challenges and opportunities really for food production in Swansea and Gower.
Yeah, brilliant to have you on the call, and thanks for coming along to share your insights as well, Andrew. Good to see you. So we've already sort of covered some of those challenges and obstacles. The first of those is engaging growers and finding farmers who've got enough time to commit to discussions about this project and then potentially planting something. There are like some systemic barriers which we don't need to rehearse to get local veg into local supply chains. And Lucy mentioned the difficulty of volumes of vegetables, the volume of veg that is needed within businesses, and certainly within Castell Howell's supply chain is like unfathomably huge. So how can we overcome that huge challenge? We've talked about skills and obviously timings. Now, I am not a grower, so I don't really know what time of year we have to be getting stuff in the ground if we want to harvest it this side of Christmas. So others in the room may have more insight on that. But Ed, can I come to you to talk about how you think this project could work? As you know, we have identified partners that we've worked with on the Gower Field to Fork project and a number of others who have expressed a willingness to grow something. But obviously the financial side of that is challenging, isn't it? Because the price that people can get for the veg they grow has put a lot of people off veg farming. It's not sustainable on its own merit. So is there a way that we can start to address that challenge and other obstacles? I'd love to hear your initial perspective from a Castell Howell point of view.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. And I think before we look forward, let's have a look back and see where we're at. You know, in the last 20 to 30 years, you know, supply chains, they have become a little bit more global and certainly UK based. And consequently, when I was a kid growing up, there were Gower earlies, and Gower was kind of synonymous, and parts of Llanelli as well. Coming down into Llanelli, they're synonymous for green crop. Now, for lots of financial and I guess operational decisions taken, that doesn't exist anymore, which I guess, you know, the bigger picture leaves us quite vulnerable, not only the Castell Howell supply chain, but UK. And in terms of what's generically deemed as food security, we're not in a good place as a country. We'll be okay as long as we can maintain our global trade. However, we've seen in the past 6 months, there's been, now in Southern Europe, there are real challenges with heat waves, and other parts of the country or the world, there's floods, and there was snow in Morocco earlier this year, which kind of disrupted supply of tomatoes and cucumbers. You might remember the news. So we're looking at kind of the bigger picture, and in terms of how do we bring a lot of that back into either UK production or certainly Welsh production is a bit of a challenge to do it economically for everybody. Now, as we stand now, we're coming out slightly of the last 12 to 18 months of rapid food inflation. But that's panning out slightly. This time last year was running around 15. Now it's probably 9-ish% on just food inflation, but it's still 9%, isn't it? And the input costs for farmers have gone up as well. So we need to be pragmatic here on what we hope to achieve and what we can achieve, because I guess our vision here would be a supply chain of Welsh vegetables coming in and probably branded generically as Welsh grown veg. So sometimes it might be from Gower, other times from Ceredigion, other times from, let's say, Monmouth. So at least where, from an operational point of view, it gives us that kind of flexibility to source from other areas of Wales. And given the choice of buying exclusively a Welsh, I don't know, cauliflower as opposed to something grown in Spain or Belgium or Holland, then that's an improvement, isn't it? So I think without going on too long, I think what we've identified here is we need, I mentioned earlier, a bit of a template to follow. And initially we were looking at public sector catering, and you mentioned courgettes a little bit earlier, Dawn. And that project was last year, and this year we've extended it to Cardiff, Monmouthshire and Carmarthenshire. But generally speaking, when the veg is available, it's not necessarily the times when the schools are in. And some of that veg is things like that can grow quite well here in Wales in the summer: courgettes, chard, spinach, kale, which doesn't really fit comfortably on the public sector menu, even if it's within term time. So in terms of kind of that alignment with what can be grown and when our customers need it, there's a bit of give and take on both sides, and some of that risk needs to be shared. I think what we've learned in the past 12 months is to engage with growers and to say something along these lines. We're not quite there yet. Can you grow X amount of whatever it might be, onions, broccoli, cauliflower? Can you do it profitably? And this is our commitment as Castell Howell. We've got customers who are committed to buy it from ourselves, but our commitment as Castell Howell, just to try and make things happen, is that we'll try and support you on the price of the seed, or perhaps pay you up front for some staff costs, because cash flow can be very difficult, and it's trying to mitigate those risks. So those risks are shared somewhat. You know, the fact that it's been raining since, I don't know, late June, early July, all that risk is on the farmer and on the grower. And if we are trying to change things, then it's not fair, and it's not the right thing to keep 100% of that risk on the grower. So that needs to be shared somewhat across the supply chain. So it's a case of trying to align things up and possibly starting slowly, if you like. So there might be some kind of project to say we're going to grow X amount of something down Gower, and that'll feature on the menu with Lucy on the various outlets who she runs. So that's in place to say we can get, let's say courgettes for argument's sake. So let's say we know next June, July, August, we're going to get quite a lot of courgettes from Gower. Then possibly working with key customers of ours in the area, they can say we're going to feature courgette soup, or it's going to be I don't know, a Mediterranean type, well, say Mediterranean, it's grown in Gower, you know, a Gower roasted veg mix or something similar. So we're all kind of aligned and in that supply chain. Now there will be a bit of a premium to pay for that. And we're looking to subsidize some of that ourselves as a company, just to, as I say, to make it work. But we need to be doing something, and we as a company need to be putting a bit of money into this as well, where we feel it's going to deliver a good reward, and identifying those growers who want to come with us on that journey, and we want to go with them. But the first thing, and I'll finish on this if I may, the critical thing with us is that the growers adhere to our supplier self-audit, our audit standards, because food safety is critical, and our customers expect us to conduct our due diligence in that supply chain when it comes to food safety, allergens, intolerances, etc. And we've been working quite closely with Sarah from Lantra and our cohort of growers who are further east to try and fine-tune that. So we recognise that might be a bit kind of scary, if you like, seeing this paperwork, but it is necessary, and that's kind of where we'll work with growers to take them on that journey. So when we get whatever it is in here, let's say courgettes, we know those courgettes are being grown to a standard which isn't going to compromise food safety. So when they go into the kitchen, and let's say with Lucy on the secret group, then there is no question mark there on the integrity and the robustness of the food when it comes to food safety. And that trumps everything. That's more important than price, availability, and so on and so forth. And just a little bolt on there, in terms of if we can work in parallel here with our private sector customers and our public sector. The local authority contracts are up, so hopefully we'll maintain Swansea and get a little bit more. But I suppose if we do maintain Swansea as a local authority, then we have 3 years to really make a difference, and working with the school caterers. So there's a significant amount of opportunity there, and working with individuals. Ian mentioned, or Ian introduced that, And I don't know, in my idealistic mind, by working with kind of individuals in schools and in tertiary colleges, there's some issues with staffing, especially on farms, whether it's dairy farms or veg farms. So possibly we're plugging a little bit of a gap there as well, introducing youngsters to work on farms, and those, you know, we as planting the seeds, and hopefully they are literally planting the seeds down Gower in some form in the future. That's it from me. That's a reasonable overview, I think, Dawn.
Yeah, great overview, Ed. Thank you for that. And great to put this project in the context of sort of a 3-year plan, that whatever we can do immediately now and in the coming growing season is laying the foundations for something that has some time to really develop, because it's not an issue that can be solved rapidly. I think it's going to sort of be a learning journey. And as you say, we're really keen to find a few Gower growers who are keen to go on that learning journey and be open and transparent about the obstacles, the challenges, and how we could make this work. I'm open to hear from anybody in the room, but Andrew, I was wondering if I might put you on the spot, first of all, just to reflect, you know, as someone who has grown vegetables in Swansea in the past, reflect on what we've heard there from Ed. Does any of that resonate, and share a little about, you know, what you think the stumbling blocks for growers are in terms of vegetable growing in particular, but farming in general?
Thank you. It's been well, it's been some time since we actually grew veg. To be honest, we done probably about 80 acres, coming up to from the early 40s right up until the mid 90s. Mid to late 90s, we found that back then people were more inclined to purchase direct from the farmer, whether that be with a veg round. In fact, my grandfather started our round on a horse and cart, and we moved towards a van that was going around the roads delivering direct to customers in our direct local area. So we covered Gysainen, Grosend, Gowerton, as far as Forest Fach, really, from us, directly from the farm. So we had a large veg round, but we struggled at the time then to contend with the supermarkets and the demand for cheaper produce at the supermarkets. And as perhaps the older generation were passing away, then the younger generation seemed to be more inclined to shop direct at Tesco's, your Asda and things like that, and it became unprofitable for us. And that's why we decided we have to specialize in something, and we specialized in milk then. So yeah, so I know my in-laws are still growers on Gower. But again, they're struggling at the moment as well with they've got a shop down in Gysainen, which has recently had to reduce to 3 days a week because the customer base just isn't there. We struggle heavily with, as I said, competing with the larger growers up in the southeast of England and the southwest, and definitely abroad, really, where we can't produce that kind of margin, let alone in Gower and Swansea. So it's how do we look at other ways really to support the growing enterprise through diversification or what have you. I know one barrier I've heard from a number of farmers that I've discussed with is the lack of, I think I had touched on it with us being a global economy really with our food, whereas really we should all be eating as seasonal, or at least as seasonal as possible. But those days do seem to have gone, so it's how do we get those back? I know, you know, I can understand that there's certainly difficulties with the consumer as well, where that you know, cost of living crisis, you know, times are difficult, especially at the moment, really, where maybe people can't afford to, all the best will in the world, they want to buy local and they want to buy organic or whatever, but they just can't afford it. So those are some big hurdles that we need to address as well, to be honest.
Yes, thank you, Andrew, for sharing a bit of your sort of family story there. I think it makes it real, doesn't it? And we hear that from other farmers or ex-farmers, you know, those old days of a local veg round, which was so prevalent across the area and has been sadly lost. Anyone is welcome to put their hand up at any time if you've got a point to make. Sarah, can I come to you on the sort of challenges for farmers, and also, you know, how big is that gap in making it economically viable? How much more expensive are those locally grown cauliflowers than what we can get abroad? Do you have any insight into that? How big is the economic gap?
Yeah, I mean, I'd support Andrew in what he's saying. You know, it is very hard to make money on the edible side generally. I think they've got other issues like planning, you know, scaling up with machinery, land availability for some, but not always. How big's the gap? I mean, Ed might come in as well on this one. I think with the work we've been doing this year, which is an extension to the original courgette pilot, the difference between the organic market price and the wholesale price has not been as much as we perhaps expected overall. So I think but that isn't the only issue. So that's one side of it. So the support, and I think that could be an easy way to fund projects and support things going forward. But then it's the investment and it's the planning. I mean, you can't believe how far ahead they've got to plan with their rotations and everything. I was with an organic farmer on Friday in Ceredigion, and he was saying the time when he's got to order his onion sets to then get them ready to plant, you know, to come through to him and then to plant. They can't just say, right, I'm going to grow this and it's going to be ready in 6 weeks' time. Courgettes is one of the more flexible ones, but with some of the others, they've really got to plan so far in advance. Machinery is expensive. There are grants available. Some of the grants support second-hand machinery, which is what a lot of our small growers are looking at. So we're finding ways through, and I think it's really positive, and it's great to be a part of this. But yeah, we can't underestimate how many challenges and how complex it is for growers, I guess, would be. I want to stay, I'm the eternal optimist, so I want to try and keep the energy and keep the optimism. But yeah, the challenges are there.
Yes, I think we're a room of optimists, and certainly this project is very much sort of countercultural in some ways, isn't it? And not easy to figure out a way forward, but let's remain hopeful and positive that we will be able to make some difference here. I mean, Richard and Lucy, you're both coming at this from the sort of hospitality sector. And we've had that conversation about the affordability of locally grown veg. So I'm interested in your perspectives on, you know, whether customers will pay that premium, or whether hospitality businesses will pay the premium for the veg, and any other reflections on what we've heard so far this morning. Lucy.
I'll go. Yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because I'd like to say here, yes, of course, customers will pay it, and yes, we'll put seasonal things on, but when we are actually costing our menus and it tips over above the percentage we need to hit, we will automatically go and get a mass product that we can get. And like Sarah was saying about planning, we're trying to get a Gower supplier for our potatoes because we chip our own potatoes now. And they need to know now what we're going to do next year. And because we're so seasonal, like this year, obviously it's been a rubbish summer, but we've done half, if not a quarter of what we thought we were going to do. So we find it really hard to get it right. And it is our first year in a lot of the venues. So maybe year 2, 3 is where we will, you know, have the knowledge of it. But it's really, really difficult to plan in the venues that we have. Maybe if we were like a wedding venue or a school, you know who's coming through the door, you can give the numbers exactly, but we've just got to hope for the best when we open the doors. So that is one of our sticking problems. Seasonal veg, definitely, we would love to do it. And I think it makes you feel good that you're eating local, and to say Gower on it, like we had purple sprout and broccoli the other week in the lighthouse, and that was lovely. It was just a nice feeling to put that on, and people loved it. But again, it's just the supply and whether we can have it consistently, because that's what we do. We do fast food as good as we can, rather than fast food. So yeah, for us, it's more the supply, consistency, the price, not so much, because you can charge. I do think even with cost of living, people are still eating and are still paying somehow. So that's not the biggest concern for us. The supply is our major concern.
Richard.
I think that's, you know, absolutely hitting the nail on the head from Lucy. I think, you know, what we're seeing is, you know, when you talk to Ed and his colleagues at Castell Howell, you know, the biggest concern for supplying food service is availability and consistency. If somebody's written a menu, structured that menu, priced it out, got it to the point where it looks like it's going to attract customers and it's going to make a margin, and then not to be able to deliver that to the customer, you know, that's where hospitality falls down in terms of it being equitable and effective. You know, that's the challenge they've got to face. I think when you look at some of the insights we have access to through sort of the Food in Wales programme, you know, customers will pay more, exactly like Lucy said, when you're talking about really good provenance, really good Welsh food and drink, presented well. It's still got to be good, but the stats we got say that people will on average spend up to £2.80 per meal more for that clear Welsh product. So the difference between beef versus PGI Welsh beef, you know, local potatoes, local this, local that there is an opportunity to extend that pricing. And I think where we're looking at Gower as a microcosm, or Welsh veg as a bigger picture, like Ed alluded to, I think it's working out how that fits into the right venues and how that potentially fits into more of a specials or seasonal approach. I think I was talking to some of the bigger chains, and you know, they're moving some of their brands down to 12 monthly menu changes. You know, they're not wanting to keep redoing the costings, keep changing. They want to give their customers consistency, but that has to have supply chain consistency behind it. Offering quality specials that sit there with the provenance, that have that slight extra spend attached to them for the experience, that I think is a really big opportunity to try and tie into this project. You know, the sort of the market data that's coming out is that the middle of the market is being affected more than any other part in hospitality. That middle of the road, £15 a burger that's insipid, that's got no provenance, that's got no backstory, and is just knocked out. People are falling out of that. They still want quality and convenience and value, you know, and value rather than price. And then at the other end of the scale, they want experience. They want to come out, have something that knocks their socks off, doesn't necessarily cost the earth, but they're willing to pay more for it. Like Lucy said, you know, the broad lines is there's a third of people struggling, which is, you know, really hard. There's about a third that are just about head above water, and there's a third of people that it hasn't really pinched on yet. So the market is broader in terms of from a hospitality perspective, and people, when they come out, they want to have that experience. They might be going out less. So tying into this provenance, this clear picture and the quality of those products and the organic products, I think, you know, is an opportunity. And touching on Sarah's point, you know, feedback I had from Simon at Wright's Food Emporium in Llanarthna, and the same at the Warren, is that they use blind camel veg, and the gap between wholesale veg and organic, farm assured, traceable veg has narrowed because of the food inflation that's come in. You know, so it is more attainable. It is closer to reach. It's not the same gap as it maybe was 2-3+ years ago in terms of the cost impact of organic. It's tighter, but you know, I think through hospitality and through farming, I'm sure the big issue is skills, but also labour and access to staff to facilitate they've got the skills or experience, or even just the bodies and hands to make this work.
Yeah, I think it's really positive to hear what you guys have said about the willingness of customers to pay that extra for food that's got that good provenance, so they know where it's come from. And I think customers who are able to still afford to spend money on eating out and buying nice food, they do value that. And I think that's what we've got to nurture and tap into across Swansea, with a broad campaign that can grow over time, but reminding everyone about the beneficial reasons to support local growers and farmers. And I think the appetite for that really is there, and it is an opportunity, as you say. I was struck by what Lucy said about, the challenge on volumes is twofold, really, isn't it? Like, can growers grow enough to supply into businesses? But then the fluctuations in demand and supply, like, how many cauliflowers can you use this week, and how many customers come in? I mean, I always thought that must just be so difficult to run a restaurant with all the unknowns about that. And Ed, I guess that's what you were saying a little bit about taking some of the risk as well, isn't it? And as a large distributor, were you listening to some of those challenges that Lucy was explaining there and thinking, yeah, we can manage that as a distributor? You must come up against this kind of thing a lot with customers across hospitality. They want to be able to order it today for delivery tomorrow, which doesn't actually dovetail with the idea that growers have got to plan so far ahead and know what they're doing like a year in advance.
Yeah, certainly. I lost you a bit there, Dawn. I'm not sure whether it's my side or with yourself, but I guess, as Richard and Lucy mentioned, that availability is key. And if the weather's been so, I guess, volatile of late, we've had a beautiful June, and ice cream sales and cones and flakes and all that kind of thing, went through the roof. Come July, they've plummeted. So if I can just make that comparison, I know there's we know some ice cream producers really well, and they really increased their volume towards the end of June, and bang, it hasn't happened. So the staffing, the costs and everything, and it's just, I would say it's fallen off a cliff. People are still eating ice cream, but certainly not in the volume they were in June. And the same applies then to veg, of course, and everything else. Interesting, Lucy mentioned the potatoes there, but I guess because we're we're in that supply chain, we are those intermediaries in there. I guess our position, this is our responsibility, is to balance all of this and work with our supply chain to try and forecast the best we can and give them decent lead times, not just on vegetables or ice cream, but across the portfolio. And that's where we absorb that little bit of risk in, isn't it? So I think somebody like ourselves in the middle of the supply chain, who are very keen to work with customers, suppliers and stakeholders, as we all are on this call, I think we can only do it really collaboratively when we're trying to evolve something. Otherwise, we can maintain with the status quo and get chips and veg and go out to the open market and develop our supply chains, or continue with some of our supply chains from the Netherlands or Spain, but kind of knowing that in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, those supply chains are going to be even more challenged than they've been in the past 6 months. So that isn't an option for any business who are kind of looking to the future. And hence, going back to my original, I guess, opening comments there, which is why we really need to look to see what we can grow pragmatically in Wales. With our cohort of 3 suppliers, I was having a chat with one last week, and he was saying what he can grow very profitably and turn it over quite quickly is fresh spinach and also a bit of kale and chard. But I say, well, we haven't really got a mature market for those products, or beetroot as well, as a matter of fact. Beetroots, I don't know whether it's been a good season for beetroot or otherwise, but it seems to be coming our way. But of course, the beetroot we sell is either in jars from Passons in Bury Porter. We do sell some bunched beetroot, but the majority of beetroot we would sell would either be in an ingredient or would be pre-cooked and vac packed. So it's very easy for customers, both they open them up, they don't have to boil them and peel them and all that kind of stuff. So it is working then to see, well, what can we grow well in Wales? And the veg I mentioned earlier, they're also very nutritious, ideal for for vulnerable groups, children, patients, etc. Full of iron, full of micronutrients. So it's an ideal product really, but it's to work on development of dishes that can incorporate that. And then if that works out to be a very profitable line for the growers and they can harvest it quite quickly, then that's what we need to do. And that's, to us, I say that's what we need to do. That's what we are doing. We're looking into all of this with other partners as well. But I guess where I'd like to be in a couple of months really, or sooner if I may, is to get our template up and running. We're there with the accreditation, or we're nearly there, Sarah. So we can say, this is what our accreditation looks like. If you want to supply into us, which we will do too, these are the bare minimum standards. There's things there on irrigation water and use of synthetic or otherwise fertilizers, segregation from things like mustard and celery, and there's lots of little things which are quick tick box exercises. Then work with some of our key customers. Again, we have Lucy on the call here to say, right, what can the menu look like next year to align with something that's growing, and then and likewise, hopefully Swansea schools as well. Crossing my fingers there. We'll find out September, October time. So cross fingers there. And then to work with those growers, and we can help subsidise it. To say we're going to have, I don't know, courgette soup every day in Castell Howell next year. Oh, not next year, next summer. Every day, breakfast, lunch, supper, you name it. We'll get some volumes, and then that's kind of where we can work together, I hope. And Richard, with Richard's expertise there on food service and taking a very broad view on trends and what people need and what people buy in, is to align that as well, because that's very important. And of course we got Sarah for the region, and Ian and Andrew as well, who are important stakeholders. So that's what I'd kind of like to look at, something similar in, within the next couple of months. So we've probably missed the Christmas, some of the Christmas campaigns, but hey ho, let's move on, and let's start planning now in August for Easter and summer of next year, which will be with us in no time at all, and hopefully with some better weather for next year. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Yes, we had talked, hadn't we, about the sort of supply chain for prepared veg and for pre-prepared meals as well. Did you want to come in on that again?
Yes, sorry. I think Richard mentioned making it as easy as possible, and as we recognise the labour challenges in kitchens, or the lack of labour. So coincidentally, our supplier of prepared veg, Slice and Dice, they're only up in Abertawe, so it's easy for us. We sales have gone from perhaps, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, well, pre-COVID, perhaps a couple of tons a week, to 4 or 5 tons a day when it's busy of prepared veg. And the prepared veg process, there's a process there. They wash the veg, they slice, dice, flute it, whatever it is. And they're kind of keen to get on board as well, even though they're really busy, and probably the reason they're not on the call today as well. But I went to meet them up in Abertawe a couple of weeks ago. We've been dealing with them for years, but met them with this hat on, and that's where kind of the supply chain can work in collaboration to try and make this a reality.
I think that's the exciting opportunity here, isn't it? It's the sort of whole system approach, everybody across the area working together, from the growers to the distributor, to the prepared veg supply chain, to the hospitality businesses, and to the customers. Sarah, any final reflections from you on the prospects for the project?
No, I think Ed said most of it. I think what works through Castell Howell is the bringing it together. It's the logistics. They make the logistics work. So for a small grower to scale up to supply chefs, you know, it isn't worth their while dropping off to all different restaurants and cafes. So it's got to be through some sort of intermediary, you know. But Blind Camel's been mentioned. I mean, they've been established for, I don't know, 40, 50 years, and they've really got their market home. So the Warren and Wright's Food Emporium are great examples of how they're supplying. And their Wright's, I believe, are also acting like a mini farm shop for blind camels. So they also sell on their produce. But most of our growers have not been established anywhere near that length of time. So to be able to deliver to restaurants and stuff is just almost impossible for them. So to come through Castell Howell, I think that's one thing. So logistics, Castell Howell make it work. And then the other thing, I like the idea of focusing on specific crops. So I just mentioned watercress. We've done a little bit of work on that. Grows really well in tunnels in Wales in the winter. So is a fantastic winter salad crop. Beetroot, definitely. The largest UK producer of beetroot went out of business this year in England. So which is very unfortunate, but possibly it gives our growers a little opportunity to push that incredibly healthy product through short supply chains. And yeah, the courgettes. I mean, chard as a oriental chard coleslaw is delicious. I know one of the Gower growers says there aren't any bad vegetables, there are just bad recipes. So, or the other way around. So let's find the recipes to suit. Squash is another winter squash, you know, another great veg which we could look at growing more of. But enough from me.
I will tell my kids that no bad vegetables, just bad chef, although perhaps that reflects badly on me. Exciting to think how we could make this project work, and I think what's come through today is that it's the beginning of a journey. This conversation we've had, which touches on all aspects of the challenge and the opportunity, is something we'd like to share with the growers that we've been talking to, so they can hear the kind of context, and we'll put this video out to those invited growers and see how they'd like to be involved. So if you're listening to this and you think you could grow something or you'd like to be part of the conversation, then Zoe and I would really love to hear from you. Ed, I'll come to you for some closing thoughts and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just thinking of, you know, sort of bringing Ian into a little bit. There's a great resource on our doorstep in Gower College, not only on the promoting the horticulture, but the catering down in T Coch there. I'm trying to think, guys. I saw I've spoken to somebody from Gower quite recently, possibly up in the show I bumped in, and they were saying numbers are looking okay for catering students. So there's a nice kind of link in there as well, isn't there? And that's something which we should really be making the most of, you know, that kind of tertiary college and their reach into schools and likewise reach into industry as well. So that's my closing comment. Thank you.
Yes, Ian, we'll be relying on you for sort of those connections into the college and into young people who are interested in building their career in this sector. And I think that's what this is all about, isn't it? It's about really looking to the future and thinking, okay, this will be a struggle for a few years, but the trends are encouraging in one sense, that the gap between wholesale prices for veg and what's grown locally and organically is narrowing, and perhaps those affordability challenges are alleviating. The will is there, the desire is there, all parts of the system say they want this, so it's talking clearly about the obstacles, but we want a future of growing vegetables locally across Wales, and to revitalise the Gower as a hub of growing. There's huge volumes of vegetables used to be grown there. And in thinking about our food security in the context of extreme weather and climate crisis, it's more important than ever, as Ed said at the beginning, that we just start rebuilding the capacity and the demand for locally grown vegetables. So that's what all of this is about. And thank you all for coming along and talking about it. We will reconvene probably in person in a few weeks' time. Perhaps we'll come along to one of Lucy's venues for a discussion and bring some growers with us and see how best we can take this forward. But I think it will require everyone's support. So thanks all for your time this morning, and let's keep talking.